when I go to a game. I'm trying to find something about that team, that town, that specific player. I want to know more about what makes that person that person. Every day I'm writing stories, and I know somebody's going to be impacted by it. My main goal is to write something a little bit deeper. How can I learn about you, and how can I share that with the rest of the world? I didn't know that I wanted to get into this industry until I actually had a story written about me. There are definitely angry emails that we get that one kid's not getting covered enough, or the way we go about it is completely wrong, and you're gonna get told there's people who are better than you. How are you gonna respond to that? My whole life I was undersized. I wasn't the hardest pitcher. I still found a way to do what I did, and to throw on a college baseball field. And you just gotta find a way to continue to get better.
What do you think is more entertaining? You think a buzzer beater in basketball or a walk-off home run in baseball?
Objectively, I think.
Welcome to the Built Not Born podcast, which is a platform for athletes, coaches, and high performers. I'm your host, Tom Mandile.
And I'm your co-host, Thomas Calabrese.
And it is a pleasure and a privilege to have with us tonight PJ Potter from NJ.com. Thank you, PJ, for coming on tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And what you're about to hear tonight isn't just a story about sports. It's a story about what happens when someone refuses to let the dream die. Through canceled seasons, missed milestones, and every moment the world told them to walk away. PJ, let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with NJ.com.
Sure. So I'm from Lodi. Also, I'm from Bergen County.
Okay.
And
so you're a Ram.
I am a Ram, yeah. So they had a good basketball team back in the day. So my dad was an all-county basketball player at Lodi. So it's cool to see some legends in the house for sure on the basketball court. Not me, though.
Well, your sport was baseball, correct?
Yeah. So I was a baseball player, and so I went to Hofstra University, where I went to study journalism, and that's kind of where it all started. I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a writer or a broadcaster, just kind of whatever was going to work out for me. I wanted to be in sports, and we're about 7 or 8 steps along the way, and we're at NJ.com now, and everything's going pretty well.
You have an amazing story that our viewers and listeners are about to hear, but tell us what really motivated you or what inspired you to be a journalist.
I think everybody growing up wants to be a couple of different things, right? An architect, a veterinarian, all those things under the sun I wanted to be. And I didn't know that I wanted to get into this industry until I actually had a story written about me. My senior year, I was pitching, and I had a really good game, and another writer wrote a story about me, and it was a little more in depth, and it had a huge impact on me. I couldn't believe that somebody else saw me the way I wanted to be seen and be appreciated, and I realized that was kind of something that I wanted to do. I didn't know how I would get there, but it was very impactful. And we still have that story printed out on an iron plate. My dad had that printed out, so that's somewhere in my folks' home. And Mark Zerwinski was his name. He passed away a few years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
That very nice guy, and I never got the chance to tell him how much of an impact he had on me just from doing that. But he really left an imprint on me.
And that's amazing that you mentioned that one person who really impacted you, because I really feel like a lot of people have that one person who truly inspired people. I know for myself, it was a literature teacher at Bergen Community College who told me he played for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I never associate like sports and how I originally became an English teacher together. And it was that one person who really said, hey, you know what? Let me go pursue literature and into my career as a future English teacher. So that's amazing that he had that impact on you.
That's somebody I never met before. That's somebody who didn't know my name probably 1 month prior to that. Maybe he did a little beforehand. And so you just never know like who's going to have that kind of impact on you. But, that's not to say like my family and my friends, my parents didn't have an impact either. But when you kind of see it all come together from somebody who really has no idea who you are, it can really make a big difference. And I kind of carry that with everything that I do in my job. Every day I'm writing stories, and I know somebody's going to be impacted by that because everybody has a story. It's a little deeper than, somebody had 10 points or somebody had a home run. Maybe there's something a little deeper to it. And he kind of hit that on the head, just knowing how much winning that game was for me.
So, and that's one of the real reasons why we asked you to come on to the Built Not Born podcast, because it's not just that you have PJ Potter below an article. It's about the in-depthness of what you go into and how deep you get into your articles and how well you want to know the people you're writing about. And that's a testament to who you are as a person. So those athletes and the people that you're writing about could only be thankful. So I know just reading your articles and seeing how in depth you get and seeing some of the work you've done in the past is tremendous. So for our athletes out there, it's they're definitely lucky to have you writing about them. So
100%.
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate that.
Before you had that experience with that one writer
Mhm.
and, that impacted on what you actually wanted to do going into college and, what you're doing now, did you always know you wanted to do something related to sports? Was it always like something like you were set on sports or was it anything else in mind?
It wasn't really in sports. I always enjoyed it. I was around it all the time. I trained in baseball year round. I played basketball for a few years. I did football for a few years. I just didn't know that there was a job out there for me
Mm.
following that because, you see these people on TV, sportscasters and, writers. They were always like heroes. They were always like superhuman to me. It felt like they were another world away. But it wasn't until that story was written about me where I was like, wow, like there really is a connection here. Like there are paths to get to this point. But before that, no, I didn't really think there was much there outside of being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of jump back into you as the writer for NJ.com. Now, a lot of people see the final article, but they don't see all the chaos behind it, right? All the build up behind it. So, what does a typical day look like for you, actually?
So there is a lot that goes into it. Every day there is something different, but there's also consistencies throughout the week. Um, there is a day where I try to figure out what games I want to go and cover, but that's not the only thing that we're doing. We're putting
No,
up.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I have to ask, do you get travel miles for this? Because you're covering the whole state of New
Yeah.
Jersey. Because
Yes.
you're
Yep.
down south and then you're back up north.
Yeah.
Those tolls get expensive in here.
Yeah, we expense our mileage and our tolls, which is it's great because it gives us the opportunity and the incentive to want to go out and see as many teams, as many people, athletes as we can.
Now, let's switch gears here a little bit, PJ. So, part of this podcast talk about resiliency and adversity, right? So, you told us that you had a minor league broadcasting opportunity lined up, correct?
Yeah.
And then COVID hits. COVID shuts everything down. Minor league season is canceled, right?
Correct.
So now what's your mindset going into that?
Yeah, so
Coming out of it, excuse me.
broadcasting play-by-play, that was the direction that I was headed in directly out of college. I drove down to North Carolina and I was by myself for that season. I also did the Cape Cod Baseball League the year before that. That was the direction I was going in. Not really as a reporter or a writer. There was an opportunity for me to broadcast for one of the Baltimore Orioles affiliates. And, I had a security deposit down on an apartment in the middle of Maryland. And then COVID happens. The minor league season was in its balance of not happening at all. And then the worry was 50 minor league baseball teams might not survive. So they didn't fully go under, but they joined what's called a draft league. And at that point, I was 25, 24 years old. And, the money wasn't there. So I kind of had to pivot and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So that was, all right, do I want to stick with it or do I want to shift completely or still stay in the industry? And then just see what opportunities come up from it.
And how did the opportunity to work for NJ.com happen? How did that work out?
So before I was at NJ.com, I was with MLB Network and Sea Caucus.
Wow.
And one of the other guys there was a full-time staffer with NJ.com. His name is Brian Boble, who also covers baseball with me. And I wanted this job with NJ.com. I applied to it. They weren't hiring just yet, but my name was out there. And I got to know Brian a little bit more at MLB Network. He saw what I was about, what I was trying to do there, how hard I was working. So he kind of, elbowed my name a little bit to the managers. And so I got the interview and I wasn't full-time at first. I was part-time for a year. And I worked my butt off for that year just to prove that, I'm this young kid covering an entire state for whichever sport and that I should belong and that I'm willing to learn and willing to get better.
Now, you won a broadcasting award at the age of 22, correct?
I did, yes.
Yeah. And then you beat out, I'm sure, some older people, probably other people who might have been a little resentful. Who's this young whippersnapper coming in and taking my award? I mean, 22 is pretty young to be winning an award. So first off, congratulations, credit to you, I'm sure.
Congratulations,
But yeah,
man.
but what was your mindset like once receiving that award?
Once I got that, I was like, anything's possible. If you can really just work your butt off. And again, I was completely on my own down in the Carolinas. I was broadcasting by myself, which is a little different than having a broadcast partner. So I was learning a lot about what I need to do to get better, what I'm doing that's wrong, and just how quickly can I adapt to that? And how can I use my story, my perspective of being a player, and apply that to speaking with listeners? And I guess that worked out because I worked as hard as I could, and I just wanted to be the best broadcaster that I could be, and just share what I was looking at.
Well, what's some of the best advice you received along the way with the broadcasting career? I'm sure there's got to
Yeah.
be some ups and downs, and it seems like a very not challenging, but a very there's a lot of competition in the market for
Yeah,
broadcasters.
for anything in sports media, people at face value, they want to work in sports, and why wouldn't you, right? It's
Mhm.
fun, it's entertaining. You gotta be open to constructive criticism, and a lot of people don't
That's
want to.
awesome.
Yeah, they don't want to hear that. They don't
Yeah,
want to hear it.
they don't want to hear what needs to be done to get better. They want to hear that you're great at this, you're great at that, but how can you improve? And that goes for writing, that goes for reporting, broadcasting, everything under that list. You need to have, the mindset that people are going to criticize you, but it's only going to make you better. The writer that I was at 20 versus the writer at 30 is completely different. I might have had the same ideas and I wanted to attack it in a similar way, but now I can approach it and make it, you know, the stories that I'm doing now. But you have to be able to, bear those conversations where you're not as good as you think you are, because that's how you're going to get better. And I've had a lot of those conversations,
Yeah.
from managers, from other, broadcasters or writers. And, you also want to seek that out. You shouldn't always have them come to you. That will happen. At NJ.com, I do have, these supervisors, these managers, they can come and help me and they'll tell me. But at a younger age, when you're not working for a company like that, you got to try and seek that out. I was emailing AAA broadcasters, and uh, when LinkedIn was a little bit more easy to connect with people, who you don't know, I would be like, "Hey, here's my article. Here's my broadcast reel. What do you think?" Some of them would get back to me. Some didn't, and that's fine. Everybody has a lot of, not a lot of time on their hands,
Yeah.
but people did take their time to actually talk about, "Hey, this is what you're doing right. This is what you're doing wrong. Maybe inflect this differently. Inflect it that way." And you just pick those things up little by little along the way.
Was there one that like stuck out to you the most? Like someone that wrote back to you and you're like, like this, I'm gonna start changing this, and it still resonates with you today as a writer.
I'll give you one for writing and one for broadcasting. For broadcasting, I had a crutch word, and a lot of broadcasters do that at a young age.
What is a crutch word?
Crutch word is something that you say constantly, whether it's that's going to be a 3-pointer made, that's going to be a base hit. That was something that I did a lot. And you don't think you're saying that until you listen back. For writing, the best advice I got was, when you're telling a story, show me, don't tell me. So basically that means, don't just throw out a bunch of information at somebody. The readers want to get to know your subject. How can you do that? Set the scene a little bit. So like that story I did on Andrew Del Rey from Waldwick, right? 2,000 points, 5'7" kid. But I didn't throw that at you immediately, because then you feel like that's all you need to know. But there's so much more to that about what makes Andrew Del Rey, Andrew Del Rey. And I started out that story by talking about, the janitor kicking him out of the gym at Waldwick, and his dad would be sitting in the bleachers every night, and he had no problem with that because he knew how much his son loved it and how much that was going to make him better. All right, now you know the kid, you know the family. All right, now you want to learn a little bit more about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was, things like that go a long way.
I think that's amazing when you say show, don't tell me, because how different worlds collide, correct? So obviously myself being a coach for over 20 years, an educator, you as a broadcaster, as a journalist, that's something that I use, except not to show, don't tell, but it's teach, don't preach, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
always teach your kids. Don't preach them. Don't expect they're going to know what you want them to do. You have to go out there and you have to teach them constantly. Even if it's somebody who's played that sport their whole life, I'm always constantly telling my guys, make sure we're teaching the kids, not preaching to them. So
Yeah.
I think that's that same milk. So when you said that, it's like from the broadcast and journalist world like to the coaching world, it's pretty similar. So
Yeah. Next time you're at practice, you let them know that I said that too.
I like that's good. Now, can you tell us briefly about yourself as a student athlete? I know going back
Mhm.
a few years here
Yeah.
about how you were as a student.
Yeah. I was the student who would memorize the entire textbook.
Okay.
I was the one who would write down every single word that a teacher would say in class. I'd go home and memorize every word, and then I would go to practice or I'd go train for a sport. Like, I was that locked in to try and be that much better than I was the day before. And that does sound like, all right, this kid's got to figure it out. That, you hit a breaking point at some point, and it's just you start to think like, all right, I could still be like this, but not 24/7.
Mhm.
And, that just doesn't go for, being an athlete, being a student. That's just, relationships in life with your family, with your friends, social settings. Like, you just apply this pressure on yourself where you got to be the funniest, you got to be the smartest. Yeah. So maybe that shaped me a little bit, but it's not always a good thing.
And I guess I could ask both of you guys a question sitting in between both of you. I mean, I'm sitting here with two stellar students. I mean, National Honor Society, 4.4 GPA, yourself speaking about your accolades in school.
Yeah.
I'll leave myself out of my GPA when I didn't go. We won't go there. But just talk about how you feel about like the success that could follow from that you're basically putting yourself in a position for success.
Well, I mean, I don't really know yet because I'm still in high school. I
But
mean,
from the athletic side of
from
it.
the athletic side of it, I think, I feel like a lot of athletes nowadays don't really care. Like, athletes just wanna be athletes. They don't really care about being a student first. And I feel like the most important thing is becoming a student first, because athletics, basketball, baseball, football only take you so far, because eventually it ends. But, getting like a college degree and getting a steady job where you're making a steady income, that is gonna be with you for the rest of your life. So that's how I think of it, is like you gotta take school as serious as you can, because that's what's gonna set you up for the rest of your life. Basketball ends eventually, so that's how I go about thinking about it.
Yeah, and there's learning aspects too, just from trying to be a good student, and then you apply it to being an athlete. Like, you just learn about what works for you. How can you absorb knowledge? Same thing applies to, all right, what is your coach telling you? How can you properly absorb what he's saying, and then apply it to the way you play? Same thing can be said in the classroom with, doing well in class or participating in class. All of that's connected, and it doesn't seem like it is until you're actually out of it, but it really does shape you. And
Mhm.
like,
100%.
am I still doing algebra and calculus and all that stuff? I'm not, but it the way you learn helps a lot.
And now let me ask, so you play baseball for 19 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a baseball player for a long time.
That's a long time. So tell us about that journey a little bit.
My dad was my coach for up until I was about 13 years old, and I never really saw much of a future in it. I wanted that because every kid wants that when you're really young,
Mhm.
right? But it wasn't really until I started getting into high school and I felt like there may be a future in pitching. Did have an opportunity to walk on as a preferred walk on at Hofstra, but then I tore my UCL in my elbow, which is for those who might not know, that's Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
You pick up a lot of experience from playing at either at a high level or the people that you meet, and it just gives you perspective into covering what I do. Like, I know what goes into being an athlete, the hard work. So I kind of have that perspective in knowing that it didn't just take this performance today to define you. It took a lot to get here.
Mhm.
So PJ, so I hear a lot of businesses that when they look for qualifications in a resume, one of the things they look for is being an athlete. Now you say you won that award at 22 years old. Do you think that your 19-year baseball career had something to do with the path that helped you achieve that award?
Definitely. It gives you a world of knowledge of what those players and what those coaches are doing, and that makes it so much more conversational, and it makes you seem a little bit more knowledgeable too, where you can talk about the analytics side of it, but you can also talk about the realness of it. And I think that's, kind of helped me get to where I am today. Like I've said before, that's a mentality I have every day when I'm working. I feel like I need to utilize that, knowing that the way people are operating every day, I might see that a little differently. How can I turn that into a story? So in the same breath, as a broadcaster, how can I talk about that? How can I relate to those players where they can give me that information and not feel like they're oversharing? Whether that's, being on the bus or, I wasn't telling them, hey, I played, like, I'm one of you
Yeah.
guys. It was, no, it was professional, but, there's ways of going about it where they kind of understand, all right, he's coming from our point of view.
PJ, let me ask you, because you spoke about your UCL. So speaking to our viewers and listeners,
Mhm.
unfortunately, it seems like a very common injury nowadays, not only for professional athletes, but for high school athletes as well. So can you just talk about from your experience, not only personal, but professional, what you see? What advice could you give to somebody out there who's facing that right now and about the mindset it takes to overcome that injury?
Yeah, well, the for the first part on overcoming that, just know that, yeah, like, there is a path back to playing. There are people who get preventative Tommy John surgery before there's even an injury. That really wasn't the case 10, 20 years ago. That was a career ender. Now it's almost a career catalyzer, but you still have to put in the work. It's still a year of recovering, and, your day-to-day life is completely different. You don't have an arm for several months, and that's hard, but if you have the right support system and you have the right plan in place, you can definitely come out of it, and even come out of it stronger because 'cause you're putting in that much work. It builds up the muscles around, that elbow, and you might even throw harder, but from that, you come out mentally stronger because you just went through a pretty tough injury. Um, I didn't go through that surgery, but I did go through a little bit of a rehab, and, for me, that was a career ender, um, but I already knew what I wanted to do in the future, so I could have gone that route, but at that point, I decided, "Okay, maybe this is where it ends for me."
Obviously, from your experience covering all these sports, we see a lot of videos going viral now of parents in the stands, correct? It's arguing with umpires, and obviously, I'm sure coaches, and I'm sure you see it. Why there's an umpire or referee shortage, right? From your experience,
Yeah.
what advice could you give to a parent?
Well, first, let me say, like, I also hear it from parents. It's not just coaches and, ADs.
Interesting.
We reporters get a lot of emails from parents, um, because it shows, like, how much of a big deal this is for the parents and for their kids and the families, and you can respect that passion, but, there are definitely angry emails that we get that one kid's not getting covered enough, or, the way we go about it is completely wrong, and it's a little disheartening to see because 'cause we're all, like, doing our best, and we're trying to tell as many stories as we can and go to as many games. Um, that passion is there. Maybe we can pivot that a little bit. The best advice I can give to parents is just enjoy the moment. Like, it feels like the entire world is focused on that one moment, and there's a lot of pressure from that, and I get it. My parents felt that way, I felt that way. It was a very big deal, but when you look back on something, on a game or a practice or whatever it might be in athletics, you want that to be positive. You don't wanna be the parent yelling, you don't wanna be the parent who gets kicked out. You wanna look back and be like, "I wasn't part of that situation, I was just watching my kid." But it's so easy to get wrapped up in it because 'cause you'll hear the other team or other student sections chirping their kid, or, a call goes against their child or something like that. Just enjoy the moment, because it's not gonna last a long time, and you may as well use that energy for the better.
And that's amazing advice for everybody listening out there. 'Cause I could speak firsthand as a parent and as a coach myself, how quickly it goes by. And
Yeah.
when you sit next to Thomas, I remember when I first had the ability to coach him as a sophomore. Now he's going into his senior season.
Mhm.
Seems like in the blink of an eye, here we are.
Yeah, that's the
So
thing, the years
flies by.
years go by so fast, and you just you don't realize it until it's actually over,
Absolutely.
and I can understand that, but there's so much more to it than, you know, did they get a good write-up? Did they get a write-up at all? Your kid is still going to get recruited if they're good enough, if I write about them or not, or somebody else writes about them. Just enjoy them playing because it's going to end.
Absolutely. My son was a wrestler. And I
Okay.
remember his 100th win, which actually brought him coincidentally down to Atlantic City.
Mhm.
And just looking back on it now, seeing the pictures, like that's all you have to go by are pictures.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have the memories, but it's like you try to live in the moment as much as possible. But obviously, with the adrenaline and the emotions that are involved, it's tough sometimes. But now you look at it from the
Yeah.
outside in, it's like, wow, now he's already, I think maybe he's a junior in college. So
Wow.
it goes by fast. So
So
it flies by. Yeah.
exactly.
And now, what advice would you give to the athlete out there from seeing all the athletes that you cover, right? Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of so many things on the court, on the field,
Mm.
all over.
I would say just know that everything sticks with you. Like, if you post something, even if it's behind, like, a team page, that's gonna stay with you, and you're gonna look back when you're in college or in your 20s and your 30s, and you don't wanna be known for that as the guy who was being too overt on social media. You can share your stuff, but focus on you. You focus on other people, like, it just goes down a rabbit hole and they're going to retaliate. And you just see it all the time. And you don't want to be part of that. You just want, you could post your highlights or your team winning or your friend doing something really good. But the back and forth on Instagram or whatever it is, TikTok, you don't want to be remembered for that.
That's great advice. And I want to kind of talk to the athlete here. And Thomas, what's your opinion about social media?
I try to only post stuff on social media that's like about basketball or like about, especially like Cliffside basketball itself. I'm not really a huge, like, I don't really post that much. The only times I make an actual post on Instagram is for basketball. So that only happens like maybe like once or twice a year. So I try to avoid posting on social media because like PJ said, like it could all of it can get traced back, and I don't want to be remembered um as someone who did something really stupid, and then when I'm older, I have to, like handle that regret. So
And I think from the coach's perspective, I'm always telling the athletes, once you hit send, you can never get that back, right? So
whatever. I heard a story once when I was younger that there was I don't remember exactly who the athlete was, but there was some really good high school basketball player, and he was active on social media, but he posted a lot of nonsense. And one of the coaches that was recruiting him came with like a whole like a whole paper's worth of things that he posted, and I don't know how he got the information, but like you said, once something's out there, it's out there and anybody can see it, whether you delete it or not. And he had like a file of like stupid things that the kid posted. And he told him like, listen, if you don't get your act together, like nobody's going to recruit you. And that always stuck with me.
that's great from you as a student and as an athlete. And now, PJ, to the viewers and listeners, to the athletes out there, right? What could you say about social media? Because you're covering the whole state, right? So this isn't just a northern New Jersey, Bergen County thing. This is, probably nationwide, right? So for any athlete that's listening, what advice could you offer about social media? Besides, obviously, just saying, listen, you got to be careful what you post. But, I mean, is there anything that you could think of without giving personal stories about somebody that got themselves maybe in a little bit of hot water because of what they posted on social media?
Stay positive or stay away.
I like that.
That's pretty much how it is. You don't want, whether it's on one account's comment section or a post that you make, there's so many times that I show up to a game and I have a parent or a student athlete show me their phone and it's a screenshot of something that the other team posted. And they're like, are you going to say anything about that? That's not my job.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to see that because that's not, I know that doesn't reflect how the entire team is or how that kid is. But it does stay with you. You're still in your transformative years. You don't want that to define who you are, but it just happens all the time. And it's just either you share something that's good or, just keep the comments, in person.
We're going to switch gears again here.
Let's do some rapid
We're
fire.
going to do some rapid fire here. You
Okay.
ready for it?
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
So what do you think, in your opinion, is the hardest sport to broadcast?
To broadcast, I would have to go with any of the quick sports. So basketball is really hard. If you're doing, if you're covering a whole state, you might not know every single kid's name to number. So you kind of have to memorize that.
You don't get something like before the game, like this is the
You do, but you're constantly looking up and down.
You're not gonna. That's
And,
gonna take time.
I'll know what you look like out there, and I can say, okay, that's Thomas Calabrese. But there might be a kid who's ninth on the bench, and he's got a hard name to, say. You want to make sure you get the pronunciation right, and by the time you do that, the ball's been, back and forth twice over the half court line.
Favorite athlete you ever interviewed?
I'm gonna go with Todd Frazier.
Ooh, New Jersey, Toms River East?
Toms River South.
South, okay.
His nephew is at Toms River East right now as a baseball and basketball player.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, Todd is so good for the state of New Jersey.
Ambassador.
Yeah, he uses his platform for good. He has kids, he has nephews who play sports, and he's so involved, but he also is on Yes Network, and he has so many good stories to tell, and he's, you said it well, an ambassador for New Jersey. He's just a really nice, down-to-earth guy.
Awesome. One sporting event everybody should see live.
Easiest answer, Bergen Jamboree Championship.
Ooh, okay.
I grew up thinking, I wasn't that great of a basketball player, but I just remember thinking whoever made the Final Four for that, they were unbelievable. I grew up around that. You got to go to the Bergen Jamboree final. Yeah. That's where you're going to see the best of the best. And as you know, at FDU, it's hard to shoot in that gym. So if you're knocking down some threes, you know that kid's pretty good.
Yeah. What's your favorite sports movie of all time?
Wow. I'm gonna go with Remember the Titans.
Ooh, I love
Football
that
movie.
movie.
Oh, that's good.
Oh,
It's underrated sports town, New Jersey.
I'm gonna have to go with you got to go with a public school, right? You said town. I feel like Rumson Fairhaven down in Monmouth County.
they just made the state championship for basketball.
They're so good in everything. Every year, their record is above 500 in just about every sport. And they always play in one of the better divisions in the Shore
Mhm.
Conference. I have to go with them because they're always putting on. And yeah, they went to the Group 2 state final
Yeah.
this year for basketball.
What would you say is the best rivalry in New Jersey high school sports?
The easiest answer is Don Bosco versus Bergen Catholic. But if you want to look a little bit deeper than that, there are so many good rivalries, and I've actually tried to package together what the best rivalries are statewide. I think Ramapo, Ridgewood, and Northern Highlands, that like triangle is really good. Those are three towns, good in every sport, and they're in every division, and it's always very
The
intense.
student section definitely brings it for those schools.
Yeah, it's always an intense game in any sport when those three towns are any mix of that.
What's one lesson sports have taught you about life?
I don't want to sound too cliche, but it's kind of what I've been saying. You're gonna get told you're not good. You're gonna get told there's people who are better than you. How are you gonna respond to that? And my whole life I was undersized. I wasn't the hardest pitcher in terms of velocity, but I still found a way to do what I did, and to throw on a college baseball field. And you just gotta find a way to continue to get better. You don't want to have a chip on your shoulder. You don't want to just prove the doubters wrong. You want to just prove to yourself that you belong. And from that, you're just going to keep working and working and working.
And that's why we're so proud and honored to have you on this podcast, because about that Resilience University, not only from your injury, from you mentioning your size, but then also from COVID shutting down what you thought could have been a career path for you, and then having to pivot again and just building that Resilience University in itself, and kind of speaking to how proud you should be of yourself. And whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult, it's good to hear once in a while and kind of look yourself in the mirror and say, PJ Potter, like, I'm proud of myself. Like, I've accomplished a lot in my career. I have a lot more to do, but
Yeah.
so far from where you are and the impact you're having on so many lives, that's a credit to who you are, to your core as a man. So that's incredible.
I
So
appreciate
there's
that.
so many people who are thankful for that.
All right, we're gonna
Give
give
you
you
a couple more.
three more questions.
Yeah, go for it.
This one I'm very, very interested to know about.
I'm interested.
What's
too.
one thing people don't realize about play-by-play broadcasting?
That it's a lot harder than it looks because people want to make the call the very second that something is happening, and that gets you into a lot of trouble. So if you're calling a basketball game and you cross a guy up and you step back for a three-pointer, you say all of that, you're setting yourself up to want to make the call that you want to make. You need to call the game at about a half second or a second behind what's actually happening so you don't screw up. Because in those kinds of sports, hockey, basketball, you can get into a lot of trouble where you get tripped up very easily, where your brain is training you to think that this is what should happen,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to trip up when you're on a microphone.
Yeah. What's one skill every journalist or broadcaster should have?
Curiosity of how to get better, curiosity of what more you need to know on the subject. There's a lot more to just wanting to be good at what you do. You have to really dig for it and, want to be better, but also want to learn more from others.
Yeah. What's one word to describe your work ethic?
I would say resilience. Tom's been saying it the entire time. I feel like that has encapsulated, day one of me as a baseball player to where I am now. And, you really got to put your head down and just keep grinding because, it can become very overwhelming. But if you have the resilience to get better every day, to keep doing what you're doing and just hit your goals, then you're going to get there.
Okay, so I see my co-host. He has a Yankee T-shirt on today. So, who's your favorite Major League Baseball team?
I'm a Yankee fan. I feel like I follow players more so than I do the team in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I do want to see the Yankees do well. I am a fan of the Yankees,
Yeah.
but Max Fried was always a favorite player of mine, even before he was on the
He
Yankees.
just got hurt.
I know, I just saw.
Yeah.
So I can relate. It's not easy being a pitcher, but guys like him, Ryan McMahon, I followed his career back when he was with Colorado, and Andy Pettitte growing up, Derek Jeter.
Those are your guys
Yeah,
growing
those
up.
are
I was just about to ask, like, growing up, who was your sports idol? Who was the person that you were just like in awe of every time you saw them on the field or on the court?
Yeah, the easy answer is Derek Jeter. He really carried himself in a way in an environment where a lot of people failed. I think you can learn a lot from how he just progressed his entire career on and off the field. But with my craft and as a pitcher, a guy like Andy Pettitte, and then other guys on the West Coast, Clayton Kershaw, who just retired, was a guy I tried to emulate. CJ Wilson was another guy with his pregame routine, and I tried to emulate that. Um, but Derek Jeter is just like
Yeah.
a one-of-one type of
Have
person.
you ever watched his documentary, The Captain?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually watched it recently for the first time. It was amazing. What would you say is your favorite sport to cover as a journalist?
I mean, I just know so much about baseball, and I have so many connections in North Jersey that it almost doesn't even feel like work. So
Yeah.
that's an easy answer, but I cover girls volleyball by myself for the entire state in the fall. I've done that for 5 years. That has been really rewarding, where you get to see a sport that's growing every single
Did you
year.
know anything about volleyball
I did
before?
not. No,
But you learned along the way.
I learned along the
Pretty
way,
cool.
and I also before I covered boys basketball, this was my first year, I did swimming for 4 years. I didn't know anything about swimming. My buddy from college, who's from Seattle, he swam in high school, and he was like, "Don't worry about it. They're gonna give you all these sheets of information. They're gonna have the kids' names on the scoreboard. They're gonna have the place that they finished. They're gonna have times." First meet I went to, there was none of that. I asked the coach for the pile of information that I was told I was going to get, and I was really just watching these swimmers swim. I didn't know what I was looking at. But you ask questions, you try and, put your pride to the side and say, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry. This is my first time out here. How can you explain this to me in a way that is digestible for people who might not know about swimming?"
Mm.
But you also want to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that was a lesson learned. But yeah, same thing with volleyball. I didn't know much about it, but it's a bit of an easier sport
Yeah.
to learn than swimming. And then basketball, like I said, this was my first year doing it. It was so much fun.
Coaching sports myself for over 20 years now, and Tom is playing sports his whole life. I have to ask you, what's the craziest sports game you can remember covering?
Oh
And
man,
I are crazy. I mean, the first that I just almost
like so many, but I mean, from the games that I've played to the games I've covered, we're in the thousands. But if I could think of one off the top of my head for what we'll call it for basketball this past year, I'll do one baseball, one basketball. Start with basketball. It was Tenafly. We just had a Tenafly guest, right? Against Teaneck. It was their first game against each other of the year, and that game went to overtime. And two high-level players, Mikhail Taylor Jr. and Aiden Goldschneider, were both pretty quiet in the first half. They were 3 and 4 in the state in points per game, and they combined for 2 points, 0 field goals in the first half.
Huh.
Game goes to overtime. They both put up 25, 35 points, and the whole gym was just completely packed. I felt like the entire town of Tenafly and Teaneck was in the building, and you could tell every single shot was even bigger than the next. Teaneck had a buzzer beater to force overtime. I couldn't believe it, and it was just clutch shot after clutch shot. Like, you could tell, like, this is going to be a game that you don't forget.
Mhm.
high school basketball is finest. That's
Yeah, and that
amazing.
that was really good basketball too, like, executed on their plays, like, kids were getting back on defense. It was awesome. And then for baseball, the one that always sticks out to me was 2 years ago. There was the Hunterdon Warren Sussex tournament, championship game, North Hunterdon against Phillipsburg, at Phillipsburg. It went to 11 innings. A kid who wasn't having a great season, in the 11th inning, hit a walk-off 3-run home run, and the ball went like 400 feet. He never hit a ball like that in his life. And he bat flipped about a half mile up in the air. And that was the best.
He knew it was gone right when he hit it.
Yeah, exactly. And something like that sticks out because that kid's never going to forget it. His teammates are never going to forget it. And that team, North Hunterdon, has won that tournament 3 years in a row now. But that's the one that started.
What do you think is more entertaining? You think a buzzer beater in basketball or a walk-off home run in baseball?
Objectively, I think a walk-off home run is
Because I think it's less likely to
happen.
happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I'd probably say a walk-off home run in baseball. No, I honestly would because I mean, listen, I think the hardest thing to do in sports is hit a baseball. Like professionals sometimes like I wonder what the MLB average is like for a player hitting a home run in a season, but I wouldn't think it's like super high. And you're more likely to hit a buzzer beater than you are to hit a walk-off home run because it's more about like in baseball, like you could be the 9 hitter and then like it's like your moment, like
Yeah.
you never know. So
Well, think about it like this. The best home run hitter in the game probably hits a home run once every 15 to 25 at-bats.
Mhm.
The best three-point shooter is making 2 out of every 5. So just the average of it makes you probably want to lean towards the home run.
Exactly, yeah.
But, I mean, don't get me wrong, a buzzer beater, especially in front of a big crowd, like, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
You know how many times my dad has told me he's hit a three-quarter shot at the buzzer to win a game? Like, I can't tell him that's better than a walk-off.
But I feel like if you took the greatest buzzer beater of all time and the greatest walk-off home run of all time, I'd think that the greatest walk-off of all time is like more entertaining to watch than the greatest buzzer beater. I don't know, that's just me. And I'm a basketball player, like this is no biasness whatsoever. I'm just saying like, I don't know, walk-off home runs are like electrifying. Like I feel like it's just more likely to happen in basketball than it is in baseball. So you have to appreciate it when it happens.
Because of the rarity of it.
The rarity.
I like that. That's amazing. Now, PJ, if you had to leave our guests with one lasting message, what would that be? If there's something that we could use this as a platform for,
Yeah.
kind of spread hopefully throughout the state or whether it's North Jersey, Bergen County, whatever it is.
My biggest thing is I'm not looking to write a recap when I go to a game. I'm trying to find something about that team, that town, that specific player. I want to know more about what makes that person that person. I'm not interested in team A versus beats team B in this tournament. Those stories will be written, but my main goal is to write something a little bit deeper. How can I learn about you and how can I share that with the rest of the world? Because again, that story that was told about me had elements of that. And that I just take that with me everywhere.
Excellent. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really, really interesting to have you on here and to talk about, your story and stuff. It really is very inspiring, and it's also good to know. And also for kids who want to be, like sports analysts, journalists, broadcasters.
Yeah, that's all about reps. If you want to be a sports broadcaster, you just got to keep doing it and doing it. Like pull up a game on YouTube for whatever sport and just call it. Put that, laptop on mute and just try and broadcast it as
That's
as
really
you
that's a really like cool way to think about it. I never thought about it like that.
For our viewers and listeners out there listening and following, where could they find you?
So if you want to read what I've recently been writing, if you just type in my name and nj.com into Google, it gives you everything that I've written in reverse chronological order. Twitter or X is at PJ_Potter. And Instagram, I've started a baseball page, PJ Potter Baseball. I think I'm going to do that for every sport that I cover. So when fall comes around, it'll be volleyball, and winter, it'll be basketball.
That's amazing. And those links will be on our show notes.
100%.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, PJ, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It
Great.
was an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is another episode of the Built Not Born podcast. Again, I am your host, Tom Mandile.
I'm your co-host, Thomas Calabrese.
Signing off. Have a great night.
Thank you.